to Klahanie. Our land is pretty rich in food in the wilderness. And on this program, our guest, Art Twomey, is going to show us just what can be had, free at hand, from the wilderness. Tubers, mushrooms, berries. Art, you've made quite a practice of this, although you don't claim to be an expert.
No, I'm not an expert. I'm just a person who has enjoyed eating free off the land, specifically wild edible plants, over the years. And I'd like to share this really delightful experience with other people.
How did you come to this yourself?
Well, I'm a geologist by training, and I never picked up on this in college, you see. But now that I've got a little time, my formal education's through, I've got time to look into things like botany, and just on a layman's level, mind you, but edible wild plants has certainly captured my attention.
The spring of the year is the best time for the wild greens and pot herbs, all coming up fresh and succulent in the early spring. And it's at this time of the year that we go to the avalanche slides, where there are very many wild plants to be had. See the old avalanche snow there, with the streams running through it. One of the first plants to show its face just after the snow's melted is the glacier lily or avalanche lily.
Now, what do you use that for?
This is one of the salad vegetables. We pick the leaves and use them much as you would lettuce in a salad.
Is that a good source of vitamins, that particular plant?
Well, many of the plants are quite good in the spring, rich in vitamin C, vitamin A, and especially so when they're picked fresh and used immediately. This is the spring beauty. We use a different part of this plant. We use the root, tuber, or corm. Its taste is very much like a radish. Also, violets form an important part of our salad greens in the spring, and the mountain sorrel. This has a rather sour taste, adds a very nice flavor to the salad. All of these are used raw in the salad. The young shoots of many plants are also edible in the spring. This is one of these, the false Solomon seal.
Now that really looks succulent.
Oh, this is just like asparagus, and we use it similarly. Identifying these, one must be rather careful. They have a central flower stalk, which distinguishes them from other young shoots, because at this stage, before the actual flower, and this is the Solomon seal flower, presents itself, identification can be a bit difficult. And one might make this mistake of picking, say, the shoot of a false hellebore.
Is that what we see here now?
That's a false hellebore growing right alongside the Solomon seal, and this is deadly poisonous. But you notice there's no central flowering stalk as there is.
So as long as you take that precaution, cutting it open, looking inside, you can't make a mistake there.
That's right. Take your book along, one of the field guides to these plants.
Is this the fiddlehead here?
This is the
fern?
The bracken fern in the fiddlehead stage. These fiddleheads we use, again, as a pot herb, a cooked vegetable. If you're going after stinging nettles, you'd better go after them with rubber gloves or some protection for your hands. This is a plant that a lot of people are familiar with, and it can be eaten. Not raw, but cooked. When it's cooked, the spicules, which have formic acid at their base and inject
That's what
you.
causes the sting.
That's right.
The formic
The
acid.
sting is caused by the formic acid.
Cooking neutralizes that, and
That's right. Now the cow parsnip is also an edible plant we pick in the spring. On the slide here, the buds as well as the stems of the cow parsnip. There's the whole feast that we're going to prepare. First, let's prepare the salad out of the violet leaves and the glacier lily leaves.
the essential thing here is to get everything as early as possible in the season, is it?
That's right.
How do they taste later in the season?
A lot of these things get sort of a bitter taste later, I think. Those are the corms, used like radishes, the spring beauty corms. And the cow parsnip stalks. We peel off the outside and dice them for our salad.
Now you're using an ordinary salad dressing, oil and vinegar, right?
That's right.
Salt and pepper.
Right. Just very simple. And then we can protect the flavor of these delicate young
Are they
plants.
tough?
Oh, no.
Or quite tender?
These are just very tender, melt in your mouth. Now the other plants that we've collected, we're going to make a souffle out of the stinging nettles. We'd use the nettles much as you would spinach to add to this souffle. That's mixing in the nettles into the white sauce. This is really my favorite dish in the spring here. And we must beat the egg whites to add to this dish.
The egg is about the only thing you're bringing in from the outside here, isn't it?
That's right.
Apart from the oil and vinegar.
Otherwise, our meal is strictly wild.
How long will that take?
Takes about half an hour to cook in a moderate oven. The conifers also give us something very delicious to eat. This is western hemlock, and we'll use its needles for making tea. You can also use the needles of pine trees, the young green tips of the spruce are also appropriate for making tea. Little chipmunk. Let's see how the fiddleheads are doing. They're about cooked. They don't take long. And the false Solomon seal shoots.
And now the souffle.
Oh yes, I think our dinner's ready.
That looks delicious.
It is delicious.
Is this your outdoor kitchen for the summertime?
Yes, using a wood stove, getting the thing outside in the summer keeps you from getting so hot inside.
That's truly a delightful looking picture there.
Yes,
The proper place to eat that kind of meal.
Eating the wilds in the wilds.
Do you eat like this often, or is this a very special event?
Well, we use these plants throughout their availability in the spring, throughout the season that they're available in the spring. That's our own honey there, too, from our own beehives.
You keep bees in there.
Yes, we do. So we use the honey to can with and for tea. It has a very delicate taste collected from the wild fireweed and other flowers.
Classical, idyllic picture.
Wild edible plants are available to those who would use them spring, summer, and fall. It's a long season. Along the roadside we find the Saskatoon or Juneberry.
Now, what will you use this for, apart from pies?
Saskatoon pies are delicious, in my opinion at any rate, but they can also be used to make jelly, jam, wine, as can many of the wild fruits and berries of the later summer. Oregon grape is another roadside plant, which is really delicious, makes a lovely jelly.
We have used that for meat jellies.
It's especially nice with meats.
Yes. Has a nice tangy flavor.
Yes. Often in the forest, and usually in old burned over areas, that is, areas that have been burned over by forest fires, you find huckleberries growing. Out in the bushes here, though, you have to be careful because there are other competing animals.
The bear, for instance.
Indeed.
Do you have any adventures with the bear when you're out harvesting these things?
Oh yes, we've run into grizzlies and blacks in the berry patch up in the mountain.
Do they get quite grumbly about this?
I always worry about it. I've never been chased yet, but usually back off immediately when you run into a competition with a bear in the berry patch. This is my favorite berry.
What is that?
The huckleberry. This is one of the species of the genus Vaccinium, and the local name is huckleberry. It's a type of blueberry. There are other common names for the blueberry, such as whortleberry or huckleberry.
They're a good size, quite fat.
They are. They're like the size of the end of your thumb there. This was a very good year for them. Now, to preserve these berries, we usually can them, and she's smashing them down there so that we can get the most berries into the sealer.
Do you put many down for the winter?
We try to put down enough to give us at least one pie a week all winter, and then some.
Are those preserved with honey, or are they left to their own juices and sugars?
If we have enough honey, we use honey as the sweetener in canning. Otherwise, we'll put in sugar. They can be canned without either, so long as the jars are sterilized and they are processed long enough.
Now, they don't make pies like that down at the store, do they?
No, they don't.
Do you bring your own flour in there, or do you grind it?
We grind our own from whole wheat, and that is a whole wheat crust. It takes a while to get on to making a good pie crust from whole wheat, but it can be done. Thimbleberries are another very good berry you find in the forest. This is the bloom of the thimbleberry. It's related to the raspberry, and although there's not a large quantity of these, it makes an excellent food for the wilderness hiker. You remember that in the spring we ate the false Solomon seal shoots.
Yes.
Later on in the summer, they give us another treat. Red berries, which can be used to make jelly or can be eaten raw. This is a really good emergency food for the wilderness traveler. But it shouldn't not be confused with the red baneberry, which is deadly poisonous. And this is where I must caution the novice to be absolutely certain on his identification of any particular plant. And if he isn't certain, don't eat it.
Well, it's hard to mistake that raspberry.
That's right. The Bohemian waxwing is a fruit eater as well as an insectivore, a large part of their diet being composed of the wild fruits. Now watch here, these two adults which are feeding their young will pick up a red berry, see it there, and feed the young that large red berry. They particularly go after the mountain ash, which, although very bitter, can be made into a rather nice jelly. And this is the elderberry. There are several kinds of elderberry. We make it into wine. It makes a lovely port wine.
These are the rose hips.
That's right. These are the fruit of the wild rose. Rose hips, also known as rose haws, and these have many, many uses.
And they're quite abundant, too, in Canada.
Oh, yes. In fact, the wild rose is the provincial flower of Alberta. They're very rich in vitamin C, nearly 30 times as rich per weight as an orange.
That's something to make a note of.
It is. This is something that the Indians probably used a great deal to stave off scurvy in the winter. And we dry them, much as native peoples probably did, so that we may use them later in the winter for tea. We grind them up through our grain grinder.
Now, I think everyone has tasted rosehip syrup. That's a favorite old cold medicine or cold preventative. But what is the tea like? What does that? Is it a strong taste?
No, the rosehip tea isn't terribly strong, but it is stronger than the conifer tea, such as the western hemlock. That's why we like this, our delicately flavored honey, as a sweetener to the rosehip tea, so it doesn't cover up the flavor. There are many types of fungi, and mushrooms are one of the fungi. The most common and well-known type is the gill mushroom, but there are other forms.
But this is an area where we really do have to be careful, isn't it?
That's right.
With these fungi.
That's right. Notice the mycelia. That's the actual plant, that little white stuff at the bottom of the stem of the mushroom. The mushroom itself is only the fruiting body, so you're actually only picking the fruit and not killing the plant when you pick a mushroom. There are also poor mushrooms, and here we have an orange fairy cup. This is an edible mushroom, but very tiny and really doesn't offer much in terms of volume. There is one of the most deadly mushrooms in the world.
What is the name of that?
Amanita verna, or death angel.
A good name.
Oh, this is a very deadly poisonous mushroom, and a very common mushroom. You see the large bulbous base there. That's called the vulva, and really distinguishes the whole Amanita family. This is Rusula emetica, another poisonous mushroom. But there really are more edible mushrooms than poisonous ones. This is one of our favorite of the edible mushrooms, the shaggy mane. It's one of the inky cap family, and you can see the ink drops dripping off the edge of this mature.
That's coming to the end of its life there. I've eaten these.
That's right. This
You
is
have
the
to be
button.
quite quick with them.
This is the button stage, and the edible stage of the shaggy mane. Notice the difference there between the dark inky cap of the old shaggy mane and the pure white button stage, which is the edible stage. By the way, you can't take these home and leave them overnight, because they'll auto-digest and leave a great pool of black ink on the floor.
The best time is to get them early in the day,
That's right.
when they're in the button stage.
And take them home, cook them up quickly
Before
And-
they self-destruct.
That's right. We're going to have a little feast of these right here in the bush where we've picked them at their freshest. Just fry them up with a little bit of butter. Are they good?
You're not getting that much nutrition with the mushroom, are you? You're getting more of a gourmet delight, a kind of luxury.
That's right. And we usually use the mushrooms that we've preserved by canning or drying.
This is a common one here. What is the name of that?
This is the puffball, also a common roadside variety. It's very easily distinguishable. There are many species of it. Has a uniform white pithy interior.
Are they all edible, the species of this type?
Yes, puffballs are all edible. Notice on the right there, a later stage of the puffball, and this is how the mushroom gets its name, because as the spores develop, you have this brown spores.
They're ready to be blown away on the wind to...
That's right, to propagate the
to
mushroom.
propagate, yes.
This is a larger puffball, and a different species, also edible. And one must always check with a puffball to make sure there are no gills inside, so that it isn't a gill mushroom. You can see that white pithy interior. At the base of the mushroom there is a worm-eaten area. We cut that out, or if it infects the entire mushroom, we simply don't eat it. These are the two methods of preservation that we use for mushrooms, either drying them or canning them. They can also be frozen, but we don't have facilities for freezing. And here is the produce of our wild edible harvest.
A delicious sight, then. Well, that's been a very exciting shopping guide through nature's supermarket, Art. Perhaps you could give us some idea of the literature that is available to guide us in there.
I would advise anyone who's interested in edible wild plants to take advantage of this literature, these references that are available. Very good ones for identifying wild edible plants. There are small pamphlets published by the provincial and federal government, as well as larger reference works which can be had in bookstores and in all libraries. And if you've got a friend who knows what he's doing, a biologist or a botanist would be preferable.
Take him shopping with you.
You bet.
Thank you, Art. Our guest has been Art Twomey, naturalist. And that's Klahanie for this week. I'm Ben Metcalf.